A tourist with a smug grin spilled coffee on the shiny boots of a royal guard, convinced that his money and status gave him the right to humiliate even symbols of British tradition. The guard remained silent for a while, but when his patience ran out, his reaction stunned not only the brazen American, but the entire crowd. What happened next became a lesson this tourist would never forget, and it all started with one innocent little child's balloon. In the heart of London, where royal traditions meet the chaos of modern life, stood Thomas Whitley, a royal guard with impeccable posture. Tall, fit, and with a face that seemed to embody discipline itself, he was the picture of composure. His bearskin hat towered above him, a silent reproach to anyone who dared forget the respect owed to culture. Dressed in a perfectly pressed red uniform and boots that gleamed with the results of painstaking morning polishing, he reflected the sun's rays, completing his flawless appearance. For Thomas, it was just another day on duty, surrounded by the sounds of cameras clicking, laughter, and curious tourists who often crossed the line of what was acceptable. Among the crowd stood Bradley, an American tourist sporting an obnoxiously bright t-shirt that read, "London is my playground," and holding a cup of coffee. He embodied the quintessential new generation tourist, someone who viewed every place as a theme park and culture as mere decoration for selfies. "Hey, buddy! Are you even alive? Say something!" he shouted loudly, as if trying to rouse a statue. His remark drew a few chuckles from onlookers. The crowd seemed to split into two camps, those who looked on disapprovingly and those intrigued by the brewing confrontation, pulling out their phones to capture the moment. Thomas, as expected of a true professional, didn't flinch, but a keen observer might have noticed the subtle tightening of his jawline. Another circus act, someone in the audience might have thought, familiar with the daily challenges faced by royal guards. But Thomas was used to it. Every day made him more aware of the dwindling respect for his role. Bradley, emboldened by the attention, stepped closer, crossing the safety barrier marked by a white line. He extended his arm with the coffee cup, as if threatening to spill it on the guard's polished boots. "Come on, dude! Do something! This is a show for us paying viewers," he called out with a smug grin. The crowd froze. Someone recorded the moment, ready to share this funny incident on social media. Others looked on disapprovingly, hesitant to intervene. In that instant, time seemed to slow. Someone averted their gaze, someone else whispered to a neighbor, "This has gone too far." But Thomas, the embodiment of royal restraint, stood firm, showing no emotion. His stillness at that moment was like a stone, unshaken even by the boldest storm. "Seriously?" an invisible narrator's voice might have asked. "Does this guy think the guards are part of Disneyland?" This scene was a stark example of the erosion of respect for tradition. Thomas remained standing, a symbol of dignity that seemed increasingly undervalued in the modern world. Bradley, obsessed with being the center of attention, took another step forward, his face stretched into a smug grin as if he'd just come up with the world's most brilliant prank. Raising his coffee cup, he theatrically poured the remaining liquid onto Thomas's perfectly polished boots. "Well, how about now, dude? Won't that get you to move?" he shouted, scanning the crowd for approval. The crowd gasped. Cries of disapproval rang out. "This is too much!" An elderly woman in an elegant hat whispered angrily. "Where is security?" Someone began recording on their phone, hoping to capture the moment when the guard's patience finally snapped. But Thomas stood motionless, as solid as a rock. The only hint of his feelings was a deep breath, as if to suppress the rising irritation. His eyes burned with resolve, but he refused to let it show. "Seriously? Does anyone think this behavior is okay? This is beyond the pale," likely ran through the minds of every reasonable person in the crowd. Bradley, sensing that coffee wasn't enough to sustain attention, took it a step further. His hand reached cautiously for the edge of Thomas's bearskin hat. "Hey, buddy, you're not a robot, right? Give us a smile, come on," he said challengingly, daring to touch the sacred symbol of tradition. At that moment, a firm voice cut through the crowd. It belonged to an elderly man in a military uniform adorned with medals. His posture and expression spoke of a man who understood honor. "Young man, This is not entertainment. This is a symbol of our country. You're disrespecting not just this man, but all of us." Bradley waved dismissively, as if hearing an old recording. "A symbol? It's just a guy in a costume. Relax." But something shifted in the crowd. Where once some had supported Bradley, laughing at his antics, their gazes now turned to judgment. Even those filming were no longer sure this was a fun moment. An uneasy silence hung in the air, broken only by hushed whispers. "He's crossed every line." Thomas, as befitting a true professional, betrayed no reaction. But inside, he felt the honor of his uniform had been defiled. Each second stretched into an eternity, yet his resilience remained as unyielding as the walls of Buckingham Palace. This scene was a stark clash between modern audacity and the unshakable stillness of tradition. The audience, realizing the depth of the injustice, began to sympathize more and more with Thomas. And Bradley? His confidence started to waver under the weight of the crowd's disapproving stares. Bradley seemed willing to do anything to draw attention to himself. His hand was already reaching for Thomas's hat when the sound of a child crying interrupted the moment. A little boy in the crowd, tears streaming down his face, pointed toward a bright red balloon that had floated past the white line. The child looked pleadingly at his parents, but they nervously shook their heads. Breaking the boundaries of royal protocol was something they dared not do. The murmurs of the crowd shifted to a sympathetic buzz. A few people exchanged glances, and someone whispered, "Come on, it's just a kid. Will anyone get his balloon back?" But what happened next was something no one expected. Ignoring Bradley's taunts, Thomas took a step forward. His movements were precise and confident, like those of a true soldier. The noise of the crowd fell silent as he bent down with perfect form and picked up the balloon. In one fluid motion, he handed it back to the boy. The crowd froze in awe. Then, as though they had just witnessed a triumph, they burst into applause. The boy, beaming with joy, clutched the balloon tightly to his chest and whispered, "Thank you, sir." "Seriously? That's breaking protocol," Bradley muttered under his breath, rubbing his neck in frustration as he tried to reclaim the spotlight. But the crowd's attention was now on Thomas. His gesture, both simple and profound, became a symbol of genuine humanity. Someone shouted, "That's what it means to be a real soldier!" Yet Bradley wasn't about to give up so easily. His face flushed with anger, and he took another step toward Thomas. His intention was clear, to grab the guard by the shoulder. The crowd gasped, but Thomas moved with lightning speed. Turning with poise and certainty, he fixed Bradley with a steely gaze. "Step back behind the lines, sir. This is your final warning," Thomas said, his voice firm and resonant, carrying across the square. This was the climax. Bradley froze, his self-assured bravado vanishing, as if it had never existed. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, firmly supporting the guard. "That was brilliant," exclaimed an elderly woman, dabbing her eyes. "He's a true hero." Order was restored in a moment that could have descended into chaos. Thomas, as though nothing had happened, returned to his position. His stance once again became the embodiment of royal steadfastness, and in the eyes of the crowd, he had become a living legend. Realizing he had lost face in front of the crowd, Bradley tried to salvage the remnants of his supposed dignity. He exhaled loudly, waving his hand as if to dismiss the entire incident as just a joke. But the crowd, previously divided in their reactions, had now united in collective disapproval. "What a disgrace!" someone shouted. "No respect at all." But Bradley's downfall was only beginning. Someone in the crowd had already uploaded a video of his antics online. Within minutes, clips of his humiliating attempt to provoke the guard began spreading across social media platforms. The comments rolled in quickly. "The guard showed what true class looks like. This is why traditions deserve respect." Meanwhile, security personnel appeared in the square, walking briskly toward Bradley. He tried to defend himself. "It was just a joke. Don't you people have a sense of humor?" His voice grew quieter with each word, his face reddening as he grasped the gravity of the situation. But the crowd was relentless. Applause and mocking jeers filled the air. "Go home, hero!" The security team, firm but polite, escorted Bradley off the square, leaving him behind to the sound of loud claps and sarcastic remarks. With every step, he seemed to shrink in size until he disappeared from view entirely. Meanwhile, Thomas, with his unshakable composure, adjusted his bearskin hat. His movements were precise and deliberate, like part of a well-rehearsed ritual. He scanned the crowd with a calm gaze before resuming his post. Another day of service continued. Suddenly, the little boy whose balloon Thomas had returned broke free from his parents and ran toward him. In the boy's hand was a small British flag. He held it up and, with a shining smile, whispered, "Thank you, sir." Thomas, maintaining his stoic expression, gave a slight nod of acknowledgement, accepting the boy's gratitude. The crowd erupted into applause once more. In the distance, a spectator summed it up. "That's what honor and dignity look like." This scene remained forever etched in the hearts of those who witnessed it. Once again, the world was reminded that steadfastness and humanity are qualities capable of touching even the most indifferent of souls.